So if you haven't checked it out already, accompanying this gameplay video, I did upload a deck profile on Hexaorb, Sorceress, Aquamarine. You can find that video in the card above, down in the description, or just on my channel in general. And you can either check that out before checking out this video, or you can go check it out after watching this. It'll still all be there afterwards. So let's get into the gameplay. So for this first game, I'm up against the new Easter Wilista. I forget exactly what it's called, but really interesting to see some of these new decks get tested out here. Good start by me having the Sprout Cutie Angel, so I get to draw one right away and draw into another Sprout Cutie Angel to use. Just letting me plus in the early game is really nice. And note, this is an older version of the list running Kyogre. This is before I really kind of settled on, yeah, these shufflers are not optimal. I thought it was just in case I didn't find my other pieces, that Kyogre was the next best option, but again, cover that, shuffler's not good. But here, another Sprout Cutie Angel, so I get to draw two, one from the grade 1 and one from that one. Draw into draw OT, don't really want to see it, but hey, at least I do have my persona right here, and the Effulgent Wizard isn't too bad, and I just keep getting to aggress here. Usually just ride up and swing. While you can call Effulgent Wizards early on, it isn't always the most optimal, so just kind of figuring out when to do that, when not to, is another thing that I was trying to learn with this deck as well. So here, my opponent accidentally using Trixie. You have to be on grade 3 Wilista to be able to use it, so we're just testing, so let my opponent take it back, no harm, no foul. So here, take the no guard because it's not an easy guard. Fortunately, Octaway Sorceress would prefer seeing that hand. I just take both of them, so, and unfortunately my opponent does heal down, so not the most optimal start, but hey, at least I can heal deny my opponent some going into this Hexaorb, and I can heal plenty because I have only seen one heal so far. Yeah, one heal so far. So not too bad. So stack them on top with the Pentagleam, called the Effulgent Wizard, the Kyogre. I choose not to use the Kyogre because I want to keep those cards on top, and this is where I'm starting to see Kyogre, not the best one here. So check crit trigger here, just being able to give the power to Vanguard, because I knew I was checking a double crit, so I just powered up the rear guards with Hexaorb skill, and then just used the 2 crits to hit over it, because I knew they were there. And yeah, I stacked them both on Kyogre and then power up Effulgent with its own skill. That's what I did. So here, tied it up and then heal block that exactly as I was hoping to do. So my opponent just doing standard Wilista stuff. I'm not too privy on all the Wilista stuff, but what I'm seeing here is just using the Uika to bounce back stuff such as PGs, using the order to its fullest effect, and then just building a board. Fortunately, my opponent does not find a Wilista, so will not be using the restand effect of the order. This swings 33k. Really strong start here, just powering it up. And I just choose to PG that one, not wanting to risk it, knowing he's not getting the restand, so I could just easily take these 2. So go up to 4 damage that way to block a heal here, though, go up to 5, because the crit trigger didn't show up on that one, but I was fine, heal down anyway. So going up to 5, I think we've been fine, because we've been able to block both the heals here, though at 4, can block, yeah, I can block heal, never mind. I was thinking if OG Hexaorb sometimes being at 4 doesn't matter because you can check heal, but here, yes, you do want to be at higher damage to start blocking here. I choose to call the Lalarita behind the Effulgent Wizard just to make a better column, and because I gain plenty of power here, just to kind of spread the power a bit more evenly, and of course I can use the Effulgent here, but the Octaway Sorceress stacked plenty. The crit trigger here, as we're seeing, be able to do that. Heal trigger, so I do get to restand both of them here, don't have to rely on the Lalarita. And just continue to spread the power here. Draw trigger. I forgot to get the 5k for Effulgent, so it is going to gain another 10k overall from the last 2 triggers. And yeah, good trigger slew here. This is what this deck really likes to see. And I could have rested the Lalarita here, but I think I'm out of soul. I am out of soul. So here, fortunately, could not soul charge with the Effulgent Wizard. That's where the Foopery comes in, but I have not found any Fooperies yet, unfortunately, because obviously I prefer a Foopery behind Effulgent than Lalarita. So of course, my opponent being able to call out the 2 Willistas, and then has the Ophelia, which is really strong here, being able to get 5 attacks in Wilista. And then using Yuika to be able to bounce back the Wilista is also nice, but also putting your order and drop to then bounce back with Wilista is also very strong. So opponent just has a really strong start. I choose to take this one. I think, oh yeah, I took the easy guard here. That was a bit tough, because I think that was right, and then taking the damage here when it isn't the easiest to guard, hopefully to stack a trigger is fine. So here, getting to throw OT down. 2 to pass, but I'm not too worried since it's only a twin drive. But of course, being able to restand the Festimagica Wilista as well as the Ophelia from her own skill, resetting one of the Willistas. Strong deck, honestly. I'm liking what I'm seeing here. So be able to guard that one, bounce that back to hand with the Yuika to have Persona Ride, and then the Ophelia, and I just have to guard all of that. So Foopery would have been nice, but it's fine. So here, oh yes, I forgot about this. This is a version of the deck that is only running 2 of the OG Hexaorb Sorceresses. So this game, I miss it, and I lose all tempo here. and that really hurts, because especially here, like I can't even swing with the Octaway Sorceress because I choose to call the Fupri behind, and I should have called it over here and swung with this column, because at least I could have restood. Oh, never mind, I'm misremembering. I don't have any soul either. So the problem I ran into was with Octaway, I was like, I can soul charge, I can restand, but then I was like, wait, I stacked the trigger. So huge misplays here. I think arguably I should have just left the 2 on top. I don't remember what I drew off. If I drew into the Fupri, then it's a moot point. But yeah, it just was a really awkward turn here, not having the soul, not having the Persona Ride, because that's a big thing. Persona Ride provides you with 1 soul, which is really nice. And as you can see, I just lose all tempo here. My opponent Persona Ride sets up double Ophelia. Double Ophelia can't restand, but you have the restand with Festimagica Wilista, and you can restand the other one. And the nice thing with Ophelia, since the new order counts as both True Heart Ruby and Everlasting Sapphire, you still get the plus 15k. So I just had to take it, and that was that pretty much. So here, just kind of showing the tempo loss that happens if you don't run Persona Ride with an older version of the deck. In this next game here, I'm going up against Gandiva, really strong deck from D-BT10, and good start here. As you know, it's just throw back the triggers. I might have thrown back, I wasn't paying attention if I threw back normal unit. If I did, I should not do that. But if I just threw back trigger units, that is correct, because look, here, all these cards in hand mean I've got a ton of trigger units in deck, meaning I'm maximizing my chances. I do draw into 1, but that's bound to happen. Sprout Q is also nice, but here I get the draw trigger, and I get to dig 1 deeper, so I'm starting to build up a big hand right away. Opponent rise up to grade 2, I choose to take that one just so I can try to keep my heals alive. Oh, and I want the Counter Blast for the draw one anyway. So of course, Spiral Q, you let me go +2 off this, just keep a big hand size. Just really letting me tank to I can get to that Persona Ride, and there's Persona Ride. So of course goes Gandiva, won't retire anything, but does get the draw and a bind from Drop Zone. And here, the big thing with Gandiva is getting to that 5 bind on the first grade 3 turn, but my opponent does not, so he just chooses to call out these columns here and just kind of push a little bit. I mean, my opponent also has a pretty big hand, and he went first, so I don't think my opponent feels too pressured by Hexaorb Sorceress going first. Maybe if I was like Youthberk, feel a bit pressured, but not Hexaorb. And it's only at 1 damage. So here, of course, get to stack top 3, and being able to use the Spiral QD after this means I can start just digging 1 card in at a time, but I choose to pass on this skill because of the triggers I found, which is also nice. So arguably could have not discarded the Spiral QD, but I think it's totally worth it. Passing on the skill is perfectly fine. Just leaves up a soul. So here I call Effulgent Wizard, and then the Laurita, and I choose to call the other one as opposed to calling down another Effulgent or Octaway, because I don't want to use Octaway here. So I figured this was just the least friction card, and that way, since I expect my opponent to retire stuff, I want to keep one to set up the ideal setup next turn. So here, double critical, and so I get to push my opponent up to 4 damage, does heal down, so really strong trigger check, 3 trigger checks. Yeah, like that's the way you stop Hexaorb in its tracks, but variance is a thing, is what it is. My opponent does find a grade 1, so it can retire the Lalarita behind Vanguard, but Lalarita served its purpose on the previous turn, so just be able to use the Meteor Flare Dragon to retire the Effulgent Wizard, and just set up from there, leaving up the Lalarita. So I still at least have that to restand. Here, check critical trigger, which is nice for defensive check, just to be able to tank out some of these, since Gandiva does scale really nicely here. So here I do PG the Gandiva in case my opponent does check crit, which my opponent does, and a heal. So my opponent is checking a lot of triggers. The trigger luck is, well, I can't exactly call mine trigger luck because, well, OT, real great way to it, because of course I'm manipulating, but my opponent getting really lucky on the triggers here, and I'm feeling the pressure. But here, right into Aquamarine, just trying to aggress up again. It's not looking too great since my opponent has a big hand, but hey, I am going to be +1 off of this, +1 off, potentially off of Octaway Sorceress, and I choose to leave both on top. So I'm not in fact plussing, but hey, 2 triggers is better than none on top because I'll still get them to hand. And so I can still try to take out some of these. I do have a PG in hand, but I can't survive much more. I really need to get my opponent pushed up to a place where I can just kind of close it off. But hey, heal here. That was what my top check was. I remember it now. Yes, you'll see. Double here. I do forget to heal just because there's so many effects going off that I forgot about. But yeah, I just heal down to 2. And that's another reason why I didn't try to use any further skills to draw, because I can push my opponent up and I heal down to 2, and this is kind of what I need to feel like I can stay in this game, because now I have a turn to push up, and then I still have a turn after that to kind of start pushing cards out of their hand. And I was able to kind of tank up. My opponent's at 5 damage. I've got a decently beefy hand, and I can take some damage. That's what I like to see. So my opponent tries to retire this column because I did have the Fupri here. Does manage to do that, buying 2 more off of Gandiva's skill. Retire the other column with Kalgafren, which is really strong in this deck as well. Buying 2 more and just kind of set up for massive numbers. So note in my hand, I do not have Persona Ride. This is before I added the 3rd copy of Hexaorb, and I'm still running the Kyabri. You can really see why in my deck profile I did change these cards, because Kyabri really isn't doing too much here. I haven't even seen the game where I shuffle and realize it was a mistake. But here, push up, Hexaorb. I needed to see that card. Even the Effulgent Wizard would have been nice. And as you can see here, I lose all tempo yet again. Kyrie here, and also I threw at least 2, I think I did throw the 2 Spiral Cutie Angels at the bottom of the deck, so now they're shuffled back in, meaning that my deck is diluted of triggers a bit more. So here I just add the Spiral Cutie Octray and put the Spiral Cutie to bottom. Here I'm debating, do I want to call Octray to dig deeper, or do I want to save it to try to stack next turn? Choose to call it here just to dig 2 deeper, and I think that's right because I need to kind of find stuff. I'm just in dire straits. So here, swing rear guard, because I can restand it and they'll start gaining power. I can't gain power off of it because I'm not under Persona Ride, but hey, 2 triggers, very nice to see here, and I can just give it all to Kyrie. Oh, yeah, I'm out of soul again. I always say I can restand, but I'm in fact out of soul. Another reason Persona Ride is so important here. I'll be honest, I was tilting in these games because missing Persona Ride, second Persona Ride, 2 games in a row, it hurts. So here, my opponent, I can still have a PG, so I still can survive a bit. Calling a draw trigger also makes me feel a bit better about being able to survive. So here, of course, swings Vanguard, I PG that one, discarding draw trigger, because Persona Ride grade 1. He's in a lot of triggers, but of course you can see this hand. How am I getting through 3 PGs with an OG Hexaorb? I'm not. And my hand has been whittled down. My opponent pretty much did what I was trying to do. So here, I do get another turn, Persona Ride, drawn to an Aquamarine, not too shabby here. And here I'm just debating how do I want to get the ideal setup. Of course, I can't really dig much, but I don't need to because Hexaorb Sorceress will be stacking 1. And that's exactly what I do. I could have chosen to do triple drive and just try to plus, but here I felt like I just kind of need to hope my opponent didn't have the cards to guard and just try to push out that way. But of course, PG comes down here. I do call the Effulgent Wizard because it gains more power. Again, just trying to maximize my power output because I know I'm dead next turn unless I do something. Sure, my opponent is all counterblasted out, but I mean, no, actually that's the draw one. But at the same time, he's gaining so much power that what can I really do here? So opponent was 5k under, didn't realize that, probably because the skill went behind. But yeah, just because that, and he keeps the 2 PGs anyway. I feel like that's just insult to injury. And my opponent's only at 2 cards in deck. So, you know, in hindsight, maybe if I had just done triple drive, I would have been able to tank it out a bit more. Because I had to just guard 2 swings. That's a possibility with this game. I don't think it mattered. I think that we're just seeing a deck building issue here. And I'd seen a lot of triggers anyway, so as you could see, I dug what? I would need to dig a few more cards. So I don't think it ultimately mattered in this game, but it's an interesting note to make. I think this game just shows off, again, more of a deck building issue than anything else. In this game, I'm up against Youthberk here, so throwing back the crit triggers, and I do throw back PG. That was incorrect. I should not have done that because I would have kept an additional trigger in deck, but here, just kind of ride up. I get to go first in this game, actually, so not the most ideal start, but hey, it's starting to feel a bit better. Well, not really, because, yeah, that's going to hand. I don't have any of the Spiral Cutie Angels to start drawing stuff, but hey, at least I have a PG. I have some of the Effulgent Octray. It's better than nothing, and here I choose to aggress Youthberk a little bit, because I can throw these out and still have them on my first grade 3 turn, which I'd call out anyway before my opponent can really respond to them. I'm up 2 damage, so I have the Counterblast for Octray that I need anyway. So here I did make the mistake of accidentally soul charging off that. It only works on grade 3 or greater, so I just check top card and just throw it back on top. All good because it's in testing. But here, Youthberk just doing Youthberk things, swings for 10. And here I'm just debating, do I want to early guard this one? And I choose to do that because my opponent, I'm swinging first with Hexaorb anyway, so it doesn't matter if I'm at higher damage than my opponent or not. My opponent would still have access to heal if I healed down. So here I do find a Spiral Cutie Angel, so I stack the 3 on top, get to draw one of those to hand, and I get my Persona Ride copy. Hexaorb Sorceress, not the Aquamarine, but that one's better than none. So here, called the Octray and then the Lullarita, so I do have the ideal setup here. Smaller hand, but only at 2 damage as well. So here, I do choose to swing this one first. I don't... Oh, to maximize if my opponent checked to heal. That's why. Try to either get a cheap, easy guard out of my opponent's hand or force them to whiff a heal. But here, I do heal down to 1, trigger crit, and just kind of force some guard out of hand and push them up to 4, which is quite nice. So, of course, my opponent just doing Youthberk things yet again. Being able to call the Wayward Therapy, loop back the Gust to hand. Calls a crit trigger off of top. That's not the most ideal, and has to call a Gust hand, but as you can see, he still has one, so it is a-okay for my opponent. And does have Tempest hand, so I check heal into draw, so I'm seeing a lot of triggers, but defensively here is nice. I can better weather this storm, so he does find a grade 2, so Effulgent Wizard is supposed to go to the bottom of the deck. That was my bad. Opponent didn't catch it either. Does not ultimately end up changing the game, because I do not believe I use Kyrie here for shuffling, so it honestly does not come up here. So here, I do take another one, heal down, because my opponent did gain some power, and passes over. So I'm still at 3, but I've seen a lot of triggers. So here I'm debating, and I choose to go into OG Hexaorb because I've seen a lot of triggers. That way I can stack a trigger on top, still do something, and then dig at least 2 cards deeper into deck. Most likely they're going to be normal units, meaning when I ride into Aquamarine next turn, that's 2 less cards in normal units in deck, meaning I have a higher trigger ratio to leverage off of that. So just call double Effulgent Wizard. And here that skill doesn't really matter, but here I'm thinking of staying with the Lalarita. No guard, so I give it to Vanguard, and of course just start powering up stuff. Second Kyrie, third, no trigger, but hey, I can now use the Lalarita. My opponent goes up to 5, goes up to Lalarita. That way I can just try to pressure lethal here with 2 giant swings. And I forget to retire the Lalarita until the end of turn. That was my bad. Should have been retired at the time I used its skill. So my opponent is able to weather my attacks, but have really whittled down his hand. Does have good setup when Sequana, the Dolbrig, finds the Tempest. And so my opponent can definitely do something here. So here I PG it, discarding heal, checks Youthberk into Palladium Zeal. So PG's quite nice, goes into Tempest, and then it's Counterblast 1. And unfortunately, 2 grade 0s. That really hurts. My opponent wants to see that on the drive checks and then doesn't get to bot deck anything. So a bit of luck for me. So here I just intercept with the Effulgent Wizard because I do have the Kyrie to call off. Again, in this version, still running it. I would have preferred Octoray, and yeah, in hindsight, Kyrie does not matter. Well, it's not a good card for this deck. So here, right into Aquamarine, call Kyrie, and I do, okay, never mind. So Effulgent Wizard does technically matter here. I take that back. I forgot about this one. So Effulgent Wizard does matter. It's 1 normal unit to deck, so likelihood that it did matter is slim, but it still technically could have mattered. And I did send back 1 Spiral Cutie Angel with this. Yeah, so that still matters because I haven't sent back any triggers. I choose not to use the Spiral Cutie Angel here just to conserve Counterblast. Oh, no, that's not why. Because on here it says you have, they changed it. Okay, at the time of recording this, it still said when placed on rearguard circle from hand, and I didn't want to get into and have any confusion when the correct translation is, it's just when placed on rearguard circle. But they fixed it now, so this is no longer an issue, thankfully for you all. But at the time it was, so that's why I chose not to do it. Since I would rather follow what the CFA says than try to convince someone of what the correct translation is. So here my opponent does have another chance because to call it the Dolbrig. Spiral Cutie under Persona Ride lets him dig deeper, and he also finds the was another Tempest. Choose to discard Gust here, which is interesting. I figured that he would want to discard Tempest to go Gust to get some extra drive checks here, mainly because Tempest doesn't do anything. Or not Tempest, mainly because he doesn't have the Sequana. But here my opponent checks 2 grade 0s again, me not bot decking anything. That hurts, and I definitely have the hand to guard this one pretty easily here, despite him really powering up. Just use all that and pass it over. I have the Spiral Cutie. I draw into Persona Red, which is really nice, really clutch here. Get to call the Fupri, excuse me, and want to throw this behind Vanguard just in case my opponent has to hard guard this. Just means that I can easily spike it up, as I explained in my deck profile. So no guard, crit trigger, and that's most likely just game here. Just power up the rear guards, and that is that. So did beat Youthberk, but I did dodge 2 Tempests as well. So luck was on my side for this game. So the final game I have here is against the Almajester deck, really with Bico Masques or Astroea Masques. I want to call it Unica, but it doesn't have Unica in its name. So here I do find the Spiral Cutie Angel to start off, and I go second here. Not the most ideal, but just kind of have to roll with it. Hand not too bad here. Still have the Kyrie in this build, but I have bumped it up to 3 Hexaorb Sorceress. Tilting because I didn't want to miss Persona Ride, but in hindsight, I do think that is correct. So finding a draw here, Spiral Cutie. So just get to draw even more, farm up a huge hand, which is really important since I'm going second, and just swing because the Almajester deck does have access to retire. So be able to check a crit here, push my opponent up to 2 damage, but my opponent can of course make use of some of that Counterblast with the Skull Chemda to get the Masques and also set up a Dragon Tree marker for when my opponent does go into Bico Masques on the next turn. So does swing here, getting to check the top card with Twin Marvel Dragon, get to do some deck stacking of their own, finds critical trigger and another Mask order to dig even deeper. So I'm forced to go up to 3, but I was at 1 and I was fine with that. I figured that checking triggers will make these ones easier to guard than the Vanguard swing, and does exactly that. And now I can try to leverage my Vanguard swing to possibly heal deny my opponent a bit more effectively. So here, discard Spiral Cutie Angel because, of course, this one's the best option because I can reorder top 3 and possibly draw one. But do I use it? Oh, I choose not to use it here. Interesting. I think because I was thinking of using... No, I think it was because I was thinking of using Kyrie. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have done it anyway because I checked critical trigger and into heal trigger. So that about tells you that I didn't really want to do it. And I do call the Fupri here because I wasn't too concerned about the soul charge. Would rather have Lalarita for that pressure play as well. So here, be able to push my opponent up to 4 damage while I heal down back down to 3. I'm feeling quite good about this one. But of course, my opponent is about to go, into the Masques. Does, I believe, discard the order off of PG, but didn't need it because already had the Mask. Though arguably could have dug a bit deeper. Here, calls the Skull Chemda, does not use its skill here, doesn't need to, and really wants to save that Counter Blast and Soul Blast for now Bico Masques. Maybe, yeah, I think discard the order off of something. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I missed them using it to find this card. It's going a bit too fast, and I was busy rambling. Anywho, back on topic here. Does swing the rear guard, can restand with Bico Masques, so of course does that, getting in the 4 attacks here for big numbers, but I have PGs to help me kind of stave this off. That 25 number is not looking too scary here. Easy intercept, or just, I choose to guard Theo. I'd rather keep the Kyrie up for a body, and I just choose to go up to 5 to try to maximize damage denying my opponent under under Aquamarine, but also Hexaorb Sorceress, which I choose to go into because I've seen a lot of triggers here. So I just leave this up because I really don't have good units for this one, but I can just use this board and pressure here. Find 2 normal units, so I have the good setup. I've dug 2 cards deeper for Aquamarine, so I'm feeling pretty good here. So your swing, my opponent does choose to guard it here. So here I can push my opponent to 5, but I notice no damage. Bico Masques needs damage, so I choose just to swing rear guard here. Just to shut down my opponent's turn, and with Clean Sweep Dragon, if he had found Persona Ride, it pretty much does exactly that. My opponent just has to set up these 3 columns and just swing, and that's really easy for me to guard here. And my opponent's hand is so whittled down that my opponent really needs to do something here, because now there's really no pressure on my hand. And yeah, I get to Persona Ride, call down Octray Sorceress, and I call down here because I just want to call down those 2 anyway. Find an Octray Sorceress, leave 1 on top, call Octray, dig 2 deeper, add the Aquamarine, leave the other 1 on top, and then I call this down. I don't need the Fulgent Wizard here because I just try to set up my triggers to close out the game here, because once my opponent has damage, they can maybe try to do something, though I'm really whittling down the resources, so it's going to be hard for my opponent to come back from this. So of course, trigger here, be able to restand into OT. That's really nice. And I think I was out of soul here. I was out of soul. So then I swing, and yeah, my opponent can't block an OT powered stuff. And that is game here. So here, I think you see more the full idea of this deck in action, minus the Kyrie, of course, but also just being able to leverage the fact that you can stack triggers to possibly damage deny your opponent. I felt very comfortable damage denying my opponent here, knowing I could easily get that reach at the resources they were at. So I think this was just a good overall game to show off what this deck is capable of in the form that is in, and Kyrie is not used here. Just get that out of here. Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing this deck. It is a bit outdated at the time recording this. If you want to find out why, or also just check out the deck profile, you can find that in the card above, down in the description below, just like I said at the beginning of the video. And just kind of final thoughts on this deck. I think it's a really fun deck. I don't think it's that great because it's still subject to variance. I kind of explained this in my deck profile that despite you being able to manipulate the top cards of your deck, you're seldomly actually increasing your trigger odds outside of just drawing more cards in your deck. You're not setting back triggers. You're not necessarily filtering out normal units from your deck, such as like check top 5, call 1 or 2 or whatever kind of skills. So if you just don't find those triggers in the top check, then you're not really doing too much. So that's what I noticed with this deck. So that's why I say it's more of a fun deck, because you can either high roll find your triggers, or sometimes you cannot. And frankly, there just isn't that many support cards that this deck has access to, especially good support cards that can really help with that big issue of the deck. But just having a card based off of the Aquamarine Gemstone, which is very sentimental to me, is kind of fun. So I think I'll probably try out more of this deck. I might even pick it up once it comes out in English just to have it. I mean, I've got a few Aquamarine stuff as like sentimental value. The main ones are like I got a necklace for my fiance because her birthday's also in March, and also the engagement ring also has an Aquamarine on it. So just kind of having a little something for myself in card form would be really neat as well, just to have access to. And yeah, I ended up enjoying this deck more than I thought I would. But I want to hear from you. What are your opinions on Hexaorb Aquamarine? Is there anything I'm off the mark on, or anything that you really agree with me about? I'd love to hear it. But with that being said though, look forward to more content coming out real soon.